As a luthier of 30 years plus, I've realized that the sound of a chisel is very indicative of its sharpness, and a dull tool in really anybody's hands can often become the most dangerous tool in their shop because they're having to push harder and to make more work for themselves. So this feels kind of dull to me. It sounds dull. And with that, let's sharpen this. And I'll show you where I start at and where we finish at. All right? So let's get sharpening. And you can see that my edge is actually pretty okay. You can see right here, it's got some dull spots, and you can see that there's a burr turned up. And wow, there we go. Now we're getting into the meat of it. Now you can see kind of where I use the chisel a lot. One of the cool things with this kind of a system is that you can actually see what's going on with the edge of the chisel. And I'll try to get the back of it too, because this I think is a little bit more telling. And as you can see along this edge, yeah, it's pretty beat up. Oh wow, look at that. There's some good chips. That's where I'm using a lot of it. And this is zoomed in pretty far. That's not good. All the chips and everything that's there, that's from me using this chisel a lot. I sharpen maybe once a quarter or as needed, because I try to be as gentle with my chisels. I don't, chop into the bench as often as I probably should. And whenever I'm using a chop block, I make sure that it's a softer material, so that way that doesn't ruin anything. Likewise with my knife, again, this doesn't read as super dull, but it is, and I can always feel it. Actually, I've got a bit of metal hanging off of there, so this is definitely dull. It's time for a sharpen. I've been meaning to get to this, so I figured I'd show you. Now, I was taught how to sharpen by my mentor, Carl Becker, who's one of the preeminent violin makers. What he always said is that anything behind the blade doesn't matter. So if you put a micro bevel on, it's a really good, cheap way to get a good, sharp edge. But because you put that micro bevel on, chances are you're going to have to sharpen past it in order to get your edge, so you actually wear out your blades a lot faster. We're talking fast as in like your blade's only going to last you 30 years instead of 50. So take that with a grain of salt. I personally don't like to use a micro bevel on my blades just because why should I? If I can sharpen well, you should be able to as well. What he taught me is that for every blade, there is an optimum angle. With my tools and my tool steel, I generally prefer something around 24 to 27 degrees. I can talk, but let me just show you. All right, so this is where very little of my sharpening actually happens. This is corrective, and I'll adjust my angle here for 25. Basically, I eyeball it between 25 and 30 to see where the blade is. I do major correction on this. I don't actually do my sharpening because this is a 250 grit stone that leaves way too jagged of an edge. It's really good for a good start on kitchen knives and stuff of that nature where you actually want a little bit of bite, but in wood, you don't. You want as consolidated of an edge as possible. I'm not going to use this one today. Let me go grab my stones. Trust me, it's a simple process. I am a very big fan of the whetstone, and specifically the whetstone that doesn't have to be soaked. I used to use the standard king stones where you had to soak them in water, and I always had a bucket and had to kind of clean the scum off of it from time to time because it was fermenting. I don't know. I got away from those because they dish out and they got really, really messed up really quickly. So I found this system, which is a Japanese system. It's called Sharpening. And I've been using this set of stones for 20 years. And they just work. And because I don't let my blades actually get that far out of true, I barely ever have to use my 120 grit stone, 220 grit stone, or my 320 grit stone. I reserve these for when things get really out of whack. So if you're building your sharpening system from home, you could probably leave these off and save yourself a couple bucks. You don't need this. This is nice to have, but not necessary. One of the things that I find with this system is that the base plate actually does make a big difference, giving you a really good stable place to rest your stones without having a whole lot of extra. I mean, you can also use the boxes, but no need to. So for me, I generally like to start off at the 1000 grit, which I know for a lot of people that's a good finishing grit, but this is where I generally start. Sorry, I wanted to show you this. This is something that I have, but hardly ever use, but that's because I learned for a very long time on how to do this freehand. But if you can't get it freehand, use something like this. You don't have to get the Bridge City. While it's nice to have, I don't use it. This is a honing guide. They're really, really great if you don't sharpen a lot and you don't have the muscle memory. Basically, what you have to do is figure out the overall length of the blade to get to your desired angle when this is sitting on your stone. I'm gonna tell you that I don't like using honing guides on stones because I find that they actually dish out the stone a little bit faster, and then you have to regrind your stone. Again, you're taking life out of the stone itself because you have to flatten it. Does it really matter? No, but when you're trying to sharpen a blade that's going to be dead flat like my joiner plane, that I can't have any dish on it. So whenever I sharpen that, I actually dress off my stones anyways. But that said, because I take so few cuts with that plane, I only have to sharpen it like every other year. So it's not that big of a deal. The Bridge City comes with this handy guide, which as you can tell by the cleanliness, I've never used this, but I've got it just in case I need it. So, just wanted to show you that. Picking up where we left off, there's a few things that you can do to make sure that your knife or blade stays as consistent as possible. A lot of people will hold like this and work, but you know, you're trying to steer from a mile away. What I like to do is think of this as a diamond, and what you want to do is get as from corner to corner in a straight line. So what I'll do is I actually start low on the stone, lift up, and balance my hand with 3 fingers back here and 1 on top. And I will gently push and pull back and forth, maintaining my angle. By picking up with my pinky, I'm actually not wearing this away. Now, if you have a Japanese steel blade with the hard lamination on the back and the softer laminations on the top, you have to be very careful that you don't just cut away at the other laminations. I'll go back and forth a couple times, turn it over, flatten out the back. When I check everything, I should see a pretty consistent scratch pattern across the blade itself on both sides. I'm not looking for absolute perfection. As you can see already, I've knocked down a lot of the major high points just with a quick little slide. I mean, I've got some here still. Basically, I'm going to continue just gently going back and forth, and you can hear the satisfying cut. So I'm looking for a consistent pattern all the way across the back. Not all the way up here, but I just want the tip, because that's all I care about. And a consistent scratch pattern here on the face. I know a lot of people will test their sharpness by shaving, which is fine, but I can tell you that I've tested my arms here and here, and that's where the hair on my arms actually sticks up, so I don't like to do that. Instead, I'll actually test it by trying to cut a hair above the surface of the skin so I'm not shaving off at the root. And this one isn't quite catching yet, but we'll get there. By the way, when you're sharpening, you want to spend the most amount of time on your primary first grit stone. So for me, that's 1000 grit. And I'm going to basically do everything that I can to get my edge established. After that, it's actually a quick step through every single subsequent stone. And in my case, I'm going to go from 1,000 to 5,000, 8,000, 15,000, and because I have a friend who really loves me, 30,000, which I don't know if you can see, but this gets down to 0.49 micron. We'll get there. I'm going to spend the majority of my time on this stone. I'm going to move to the knife. This is a completely different beast, kind of. With this, again, you want to make sure that you get your diagonal established as well as you can. And I'm going to make sure that I put one finger right here by the tip of the knife. So that way I'm not just wearing away the corner. I've never actually taken this to a grindstone, and I never cut with this back side of the blade. So you can see where the original factory was, and this is what I generally sharpen. So again, I'm lifting up with my two fingers back here, making sure that I maintain pressure on the tip. I'm pushing down on this backside here to be even. And I'm just going to make sure that when I pull back, I'm actually going to lift up slightly more on the backside so I don't drag this. Now, being that this is a Japanese knife, I do have to be very careful with my technique, because this has the softer laminations and I don't want to change my blade angle. I'm very happy with it, and this one is at 25 degrees. You don't want it to be too thin, you don't want it to be too thick. Now, I'm kind of looking at this in the light and it's kind of hard to see. So you can tell if a blade is sharp or not by the amount of reflection right at the very edge. I'm going to do the same thing here, making sure that I'm pushing down on the tip and just kind of give it a few passes just to hit both sides. And I'm gonna constantly check this in the light. I can see on this one that I still have a little bit of dullness here, and you can actually see that reflecting in the light. The idea is that we can pull a burr on both sides, and as you flip back and forth, that little burr is going to fall off. Yeah, we can see already that edge looks a lot better. And what we're seeing is a little bit of a burr right at the edge, which will go away. This is actually really micro. I don't have a banana for scale. Anywho, I'm just gonna kind of clear this off. Now that I've gotten my edges very well established, I'm actually gonna just start removing the excess bits and whatnot. So I'll just kind of give you a little update as we go. But the next stone is my 5,000 stone, and I know that there's a grit in between. You don't really need it, and saves time. And if it gets between me and woodworking, I'm probably going to work on a duller tool longer because I don't want to necessarily go for another tool, or stone in this case. What we are looking for is the blade itself to become smooth. And this isn't something I can really show you or describe to you, but it's a feel thing. As you start on each blade on the stone, you're going to feel the previous striations grab and work themselves out. And when you start to get that little bit of chatter right at the end, you know that you're just about ready. So I'll spend, a few minutes on each blade on my first stone, and then very little time on each one because I'm just removing the bits. So this is with the 5,000. You can see already how well consolidated that edge is. Once you get your mechanics down, you're going to find that it goes really easy. Now, stay tuned because I am going to finish sharpening these up, and I'll show you the final result at the end. This is off of just the 5,000, and for me, for a long time, this was good enough because it worked really well. But you can actually still feel the drag on the surface of the wood. So I actually like to go further until the steel is almost completely polished blue. It's pretty remarkable. All right, so it's been a little bit of time, and I'm just finishing up the last bit of honing on this amazing 30,000 stone, which is super hard. It barely takes any material, which is really good. And but I think we're about there. So we'll throw this up under the microscope. So let's see what this edge looks like now. There's no more, hope that's a little hair fuzz. There's no more burrs along that edge, which is exactly what we want to see. And, same knife as before. If you recall, it was pretty haggard, but now coming up here, you can see that the scratch pattern is almost non-existent, and I actually don't care about the scratch pattern on the face. I'm only concerned about the edge of the blade itself. So I'm gonna wipe down here and dry off so I can put my top down and move the stuff out of the way. And now let's take a listen to the difference in the chisels. I'm gonna go to the same place, and you can see it just cuts better. It's so much smoother, and my required effort is so much less. Yep, there we go. So, if you want to sharpen like me, yes, it's gonna take a lot of practice, but it's really easy if you use the right materials, the right stones, and don't mess about too much with the fancy extra tools. It doesn't have to be complicated. In fact, it's not. So with that said, links for all this stuff is down below in the description. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. See ya.